Welcome to the Joyful Nourishment Podcast. This is a podcast about our relationship with food and eating, body image, eating disorder recovery, mental health, and more. I am your host, Lynn Thorstensen, a registered nutrition therapist and body image coach based in the west of Ireland. And I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome back to another episode of the Joyful Nourishment Podcast. And today I'm here with Ana Stefan, aka the Aligned Body Coach, who helps women to see how truly amazing their bodies and their full selves are through mindful and aligned movement. Ana combines her wisdom in Pilates, yoga, meditation, myofascial movement and breathwork to take a mindful approach to movement that supports women in attaining their aligned body. And I'm going to link to all the places you can find Ana at the end of our conversation and in the show notes. So Ana, thank you so much for joining me today. And I really look forward to this conversation because I saw you posting on Instagram a while ago around thinking about movement as a path to body acceptance. So I'm hoping that we're can center our conversation around that, but it might take us in other different directions too. But anyway, you're really welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Lynn, and thank you everybody for listening to this episode.
Yeah, and you also have a podcast actually, Ana, so maybe we can mention that at the end.
Oh, definitely.
Want to find more
all about that. Mind and body, so they're all related.
Super. So I think, where do you want to start this conversation? I mean, I like personally starting with a little bit about people's kind of personal story and history around how you kind of arrived to where you are now, and feel free to interpret that how you feel.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm Romanian originally. I moved to Italy when I was 19 and then moved to Ireland when I was 28. So I've lived in a few countries and went through, a million jobs probably before I got to do what I do today. And I started 5 years ago when I became a yoga teacher. I've always loved yoga. I started in my 20s just because it was a cool thing to do. And we had this lovely Indian teacher and he was all dressed in white and it was such a cool thing to do. And I realized how good it was for my body. I lost that throughout the years, just work, college. And when I came to Ireland, actually, when I was 28, that's when I went back to a yoga class and completely fell in love with it again and decided to do a yoga teacher training. So that's when my story actually starts with movement in that sense. But up to that point, I never felt like I never actually took a gym class, if you can believe that. Never been to a gym. I hate everything that is the gym environment as traditionally know. I know it's changing. But I never actually intentionally moved. I was dancing all the time in my house, cleaning the house, dancing, and just never needed to run, walk intentionally or do anything until I went back to yoga. So from that point, I kept going because of how my body was feeling. I had lots of back pain. I had lots of knee pain. There was so much going on, and there were so many ways in Ireland where yoga wasn't practiced in the real meaning of the sense. It was more like a gym workout as well. Mm-hmm. So I was really hurting myself in these yoga classes more than anything. There was a lot of ego involved. There was a lot of like, oh, I can't do that. Why can't I do that? Why am I not flexible? Why is my body, not strong enough? There was a lot of that going on, and my body was completely in pain. And that led me to Pilates, which I didn't like at the beginning, but it completely changed my life and it completely changed the way I move. I continued with all those trainings that you mentioned earlier. I added a few more. I became a flexibility coach. I'm obsessed with fascia. I did some fascia training, some bone health training. so much more. I just do trainings every 5 minutes, it seems, breath work and more yoga trainings, so much more. So I'd like to combine them all now to give that idea of the aligned body, of the move because you like it, not because you have to, type of thing.
Yeah. And I just want to say I relate to the whole training thing because I find myself there. And I think it's always that kind of way of keeping an eye on, like, going, am I doing this because I'm really interested and fascinated and I want to grow my skills, or am I kind of doing this because I don't think I know enough? And it's kind of sometimes it's a bit of a mix of both, but definitely. And I think, though, that aside, having, looking at things from different angles and from different teachers brings us into this space where we take all of these different teachings from people, absorb them, integrate them, and then sort of proceed forward is something that looks like our own, in the sense of like how we then bring those teachings into the world through ourselves. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I think about it, because my path in a different field is quite similar to that. Like, I've trained with lots of different people and pull on many different strings, whatever seems most relevant for that person or for the context in which you're teaching or guiding somebody. So
Exactly. I mean, there was a point where I was training because of that imposter syndrome, because of thinking I don't know enough. And honestly, no, I don't know enough. Especially if you get into yoga, there's so much of it that we don't know. And it's literally, I know it's overused, the word a lifetime journey, but it is a lifetime journey of learning. You never are a master in yoga. So there is so much more to learn. Now, I know enough to help the people I help, but at one point it became just curiosity about the body. I think the more I learn about the body, the more fascinated I am with it. And the more I want to discover new ways of moving, new ways of breathing, new ways of helping people, basically. And it's all so personalized. It's all so different, individual by individual.
yeah, that sounds so wonderful. And I'm really interested, like, because I'm probably a person who've done, well, actually, I am a person who's done mostly Pilates when it comes to this type of movement. And I was training for a good 10 years. And then since the pandemic and I moved and things kind of have fallen a bit by the wayside. And I haven't done that much yoga. I have done small bits and pieces. I have a small bit of a grasp of this spiritual practice that yoga is, and the sort of the roots of it through different things and friends and stuff that are in that. But some movements feel similar to me, but they come from a different place. Would that be would that be right to say it like that?
Yeah, no, definitely. Joseph Pilates took some inspiration from some of the yoga moves from ballet, and so it's a mix. Of course, we're talking about thousands of years old practice compared to a very recent one, which is Pilates. So very different practices. In Pilates, there is no spiritual part. It is a very mindful as well, because breathing is very much part of the movement. So yes, even if some of the movements, let's say in Pilates we call them exercises, in yoga we call them poses, have very different purpose, and they're executed very differently. And again, that those energy channels, that spirituality is not part of your Pilates practice. Although again, I try to not teach just Pilates or just yoga or just stretching. I try to combine them all, and so they blend a little bit in what I teach. I put a little bit of that mindfulness, gratitude towards the body and everything in my Pilates classes. So then it becomes a little bit more of a holistic thing. But yeah, they're very, very different. Pilates has a very different purpose. And when it comes to the body, if you want to think of it as yoga is something expansive, Yoga is having a center reaching all the way, reaching out, expanding, opening all the time, and knowing. And Pilates is a little bit more centered. It's all about keeping the movement small, keeping the movement control. Yoga is about letting go of control. Pilates is so much more about that control in the body.
And do you feel like that kind of way of, I don't know the word I'm looking for, like the way of kind of thinking about it, that would suit the different people? And is there a way where one way of kind of coming at it, I don't know, I feel like that doesn't really explain what I'm trying to say, but that where there's,
how do you get to try to decide which one you want to try?
or is there, like, because I'm thinking about saying, in a lot of people that I work with, where control is like kind of a center part of it, and where sometimes it's not that helpful, or it's got to a point where that level of trying to control things is just not helpful anymore. And if you're coming from that place, like, do you think like moving more to a yoga practice, could that be more beneficial in the greater context, like beyond just like the poses, versus like somebody maybe gravitating more towards Pilates, but that could potentially kind of feed back into that sense of wanting everything to be controlled?
Yes, when I mentioned control, I meant just the body. So I just meant in terms of movement. But yes, that is such an interesting thing to think about as well. Someone who is a little bit anxious, someone who is a little bit in trying to control every situation, would benefit more from going into a yoga practice. Now, that would be probably the most challenging thing they'll do because of their mind. But they would benefit more from that. They would enjoy more Pilates, but they would benefit more from a yoga practice. And there are so many styles of yoga. So it depends which class you drop into, which teacher you find as well. I always say that you find your teacher. You don't find yoga or Pilates. You just find your teacher, you find your mentor, and then you find your practice. So it really depends where you go to. But if you tend to have that personality where you can't let go of things, where you want to be in control at all times, then definitely yoga is a practice that you should try. And if you're the other way around, if you're easy breezy and you can get things done, I'd say, or I don't know, if you need a little bit more structure in your life and your body, Pilates is such a good place to start. If you're, from a physical point of view, if you're very flexible, hypermobile, even bringing everything back to the center, slowing down the movement, can be so beneficial for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know, of course, it's not as clear cut as that. And I do think out of what you're saying, from where I'm sitting and what I'm witnessing some of my clients, and some earlier conversations I had in this podcast with a yoga teacher, when she said like her biggest challenge when she started was like the Shavasana. And like she still sees, and maybe you see this as well in some of your students, it's like, yeah, okay, the exercise is over, so let's just get out of here.
Yeah. The hardest part when your mind is racing is to do nothing. So if you tend to be hyperactive, and of course we go from a yin and yang point of view. Yang is that very active person. The last thing you want to do is go into a hot yoga class, go into a dynamic yoga class as well. Some people enjoy that, so that's all they do. So then when you end up in a yin class, or you end up in a very slow mindful Pilates, you are bored to death, because that's not what your body wants, that's not what your mind wants, but that's what you need. So sometimes I always preach, move because you love it, not because you have to. In these type of situations, I think a little bit of that's what you need. Can you stick to it like I did? I absolutely hated Pilates. I was like, what is this? Also, I was in the very wrong class at the beginning. And it was very gym-like. So I hated everything about it until I found my teacher, until I found my mentor. And the way she explained it, the way she did things made so much more sense to me and my body.
And what was the shift there? Like you said, the first time you tried Pilates, it was quite gym-like. And what shifted then when you found a different teacher?
Well, I think it was the focus of it. I think in the gym environment, Pilates was another way to tone your body and slim your body and all this nonsense. And it was done in a way that did not explain anything about the body. It was just calling out the exercises, showing them in a way that for me looked absolutely impossible. And the second thing, it was absolute pain. It was the wrong class because I was not there physically. I had so much back pain, so much neck pain, that I wasn't able to do them. And there was a 70-year-old who was able to do all of them, and I was frustrated. Comparing myself, and the environment was, the music was loud. Everything about it was like, you know, the teacher screaming at us to get motivated. And I'm that is not something I've ever liked in my life. So then when I moved to what I teach today, is adding a little bit of get to know your body. Why are you doing things? I always love to know the why of a certain move. How does it benefit you? What's going on when you're doing that? How are you breathing in it? Is there a way to do it so that you don't experience pain? Is there a way to modify for your ability for where you are right now instead of comparing yourself to where other people are? So when you get to that point that you modify everything to suit your body, you let go of the ego that says, why can't I do it? And accept where you are. That's when it's transformative. So that's the difference.
Yeah. I think that what you just said there, that's so powerful, because I also feel like that sometimes the gym environment is just like, it just really breeds the comparison. And I'm not a naturally flexible person. Like when I was training Pilates twice a week, it would take me a good 6 months to be able to reach my toes. And now when I haven't been properly practicing for a couple of years, I am nowhere near my toes, you know, and that's kind of partly how my body is, I think, naturally. You know, tight hamstrings and just not very foldable. And maybe I will never, ever be able to like do those beautiful forward bends in yoga where people just seem to be bending from the hips and then putting their hands flat on the floor. And I'm like, just can't do it. I'm really happy if I can don't have to like totally like, I don't know, squat in order to like put my fingertips on the floor. But I do know that when I am consistently practicing, my flexibility does improve. And then of course, if I have a long break, it sort of goes back to where it thinks it should be. So being able to do that, I think, to have a teacher that helps us meet our bodies where they're at and like create that invitation, particularly when we, you know, maybe have a difficult relationship with exercise where it's quite fraught, it's very punishing or punitive, it's compensatory for, you know, in order to manage our eating behaviors. It's quite radical to be in a position, to be in a place where that's an invitation to really connect with our bodies and really, I suppose, work on embodiment.
Definitely acceptance of where you are, and then a little bit of that knowledge. For example, why are you trying to touch your toes? What's the purpose of that? You know, because so is it because it just looks good? But stretching your hamstrings can affect your back health, your posture, and everything else, and how your spine feels throughout the day, and so on. Having my hips open, for example, I was very inflexible, and I don't consider myself a flexible person, but not being able to sit cross-legged was giving me a lot of back pain in yoga classes. So just opening the hips helped with that. But knowing the why behind why you're doing things, first of all, really helps. And the second thing is Can you adjust, for example, in a forward fold? Can you bend the knees and do it correctly to feel that deep stretch? And that's such a wonderful sensation when you come out of it. So if you're able to let go of the ego of looking like other people, if you're able to accept where you are, sure, my hamstrings are tight. Fantastic. That's where I am today. And if you're able to modify so that you experience what that goodness of the stretch, then you will enjoy it. Then you will show up over and over again. If you're going there and you're uncomfortable, you compare yourself and you're in pain, there's definitely no way you're going to come back.
Yeah. And no, I mean, I think you're right. And it also made me think about something, like when I was preparing for this conversation, I was thinking about also this kind of relationship with exercise where we do things because we think we have to, or we're trying to manipulate what our body looks like, or, you know, we exercise because it's part of an intentional weight loss pursuit. And when I was thinking back of my own past around exercise and my relationship with movement and stuff, is that when I let go of like moving because of a way of modifying, say, my food intake, or trying to sort of manipulate my weight, I was able to tolerate like the sometimes, you know, like the sore muscles and things that come afterwards. And when we're using muscles that we don't maybe use very often, much better than when I was just like trying to exercise and look at like some calorie counter thing and say, well, I've been struggling in this thing for half an hour and it says I have expended X amount of calories. And I'm like, that's not a motivation. It's definitely not a motivation for me. And it just felt, yeah, it helped move towards a place of more kind of attunement with my body and appreciation for my body, and how my maybe abilities changed over time by being consistent with movement or movement practices.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all have a place where we're thinking that we have to do certain things to look a certain way. And you know what? As women, we're told to change our bodies constantly. You're told to change your body when you reach your 20s, and then when you give birth, and then when you're 40, and then when you're 60, and then when you're 70. It never ends. It's like I watched my grandmother talking about negatively about her body. I watched my aunties, and I was beyond sick of it as an observer all the time, of seeing that it never ends. I wasn't happy at 16 because I was too skinny. I wasn't happy at 20 because I was told I was putting on weight. And you look back at your pictures and you were like, I was mad. I was gorgeous. I was, super skinny anyway, if that's what it is. I'm not saying that it's gorgeous, but I was just absolutely perfect at every age. And I went through a period around 33, from 33 to kind of like 35, where I completely hated my body. I had put on weight, but I didn't hate my body at home, if that makes sense. So I didn't hate my body in the mirror or anything, just in the pictures or when someone else made a comment. Or I hated my body when I had to put it on Instagram and show other people. So as someone who teaches movement, I was a yoga teacher, I was a Pilates teacher, and didn't look like one. Because if you Google yoga teacher, Pilates teacher, they're all, like ballerina style on YouTube or Google.
Yeah.
So I didn't look like one. So I was very self-conscious and very self-aware. And I was like, should I just do more? Should I just lose this weight and all that? And I said, no, you know what? Just look at what my body can do. I went on a hike and I was absolutely fine. I can dance and I'm absolutely fine. I breathe, I move, I eat, I enjoy life. So what it looks like should have no consequence on all these things that I can do. So now I try to help other people see that and help other people move for how their body feels, and move for how their body feels in relation to what they want to do in life. Because not all of us want to be weightlifters. Not all of us want to be gymnasts. Not all of us want to run marathons. But if what you want to do is a hike at the weekend and you want to do it without pain, I'm your woman. If what you want to do is garden without back pain or hip pain, I'm your woman, and knee pain or things like that, so finding the joy into your activities through movement is better than trying to move to change your body, change how it looks, I think.
Yeah. And it's just so, it's still such a radical idea in our current world that's like, that you can do that you can actually decide to pursue movement for the sheer joy of it, and for the benefit of how particular these types of movement practices like Pilates and yoga, because it benefits other areas of your life, in your living of your life, not the aesthetics, because so much of it is conflated in that. And again, I think it's just so beautiful. We have so much variety of ways we can move our bodies, but sometimes, you look at social media or something, it just feels like, well, and even sometimes in the space of where we're expanding the idea of movement, it still feels like what you said. It's like, well, we still have to go to the gym though, but you could be lifting weights, so you're stronger. But it's like, I don't personally particularly like that environment.
Do you need it?
So I'm like, yeah, but I like the idea of my body being strong and flexible, and not having back pain, which I have experienced fairly recently, which I know is from a lot of sitting, which comes with working on the computer a lot. And that's it. Even when I had an outdoor job, I would still have physical pains because you're strong, but maybe, your posture isn't strong enough, or your alignment isn't that great. So you still end up with pains and aches in places, even if you're physically active, like through your job. So that's another thing.
Pain is such a different concept as well. It's also how you describe pain is important in your mind, and stress can cause that back pain and everything. So it's really an interesting one. But what would you like to do in your life? You have to ask yourself, what brings me joy? Oh, going for a walk with my dog without that niggling sensation, without that pain, if there's pain, without feeling the stiffness at the end of the walk, without, bending and not being able to. So what are the things, the non-negotiable in your life that bring you joy? I love my job, therefore I want to keep doing my job without pain. Then that's your aim. Your aim shouldn't be a size. Your aim shouldn't be what Instagram tells you it should be, what other people tell you. Your aim should be being able to enjoy your life, because it goes away in a blink, and you won't remember anything except how many times you tried to change your body when it was actually absolutely okay.
Yeah, so true. And it is, and I think we just need to hear that message over and over. I'm really curious about the other things that you do as well, the myofascial movement and fascia. I have only a small bit of understanding, and correct me here now if I'm wrong, but the fascia is like part of the structure where a lot of like our emotional connections and communication happens.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's such a complex, the fascia is such a complex conversation, but to explain it in very easy terms, and it's such, again, new research. If you think about yoga, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, they knew about this thousands of years ago, and traditional medicine is just catching up, honestly. Fascia, if you think about it as a web, like a spider web or a network of tissue that just connects everything in your body. It's underneath your skin, it's in the muscle, it wraps the muscles, it's everywhere basically. And it transfers as well emotions, sensations, and everything through the body. It's very much awake. It's made of water and collagen, and it adds that elasticity to your body. So when you move through muscle and fascia, myofascia, your movement is just more more fluid, more graceful. It just feels better in the body, and you enjoy movement a little bit more than just a regular stretch or a regular exercise that targets a certain muscle. The idea of the muscle and fascia movement is that strength comes from your toe to the crown of your head. There is no such thing as thinking of the body as oh, I'm going to work my biceps today. Oh, I'm going to work my abs today. I'm going to work my legs today. No, it's everything connected. So if you know how to move in a way that respects that connection throughout the whole body, then your whole body will feel much better. So it's everything connected. Strength or mobility comes from your toes all the way up. It's all very interconnected.
That sounds amazing. I think one of the first things I heard is like, I don't know if you read this book. It's very old, and I think the woman who wrote it, she died. I mean, it was written in the early 90s. Molecules of Emotions, Candace Pert, right? Am I right in saying that she was one of the researchers that discovered the neuropeptides, and the neuropeptides are traveling in the fascia, like that's where they are. That's where the connection is happening. That's where they are moving through.
It's funny because you say that because I have actually one of my episodes is with one of my teachers and mentors, Susan Church. One of my podcast episodes talks about fascia and its connection, fascia hypermobility, and its connection to depression, its connection to so how being hypermobile can actually cause anxiety. And it's such an interesting episode. Now, like, to talk about that, I'm not an expert, of course, so it's better to guide people to that conversation.
Yeah, I will link to that as well below, and I'm going to have a listen to that, because one of the things that I have heard is when people have the hypermobility issues, or like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, there is quite a strong overlap with that, with disordered eating or eating disorders as well. And of course, there's other connective issue challenges or things that comes with that, like overlap with digestive issues and things like that. So it's really it's so fascinating though, isn't it? Like the body is so fascinating with how, like, psychology and physiology kind of actually works together. And I think it feels to me that we are kind of slowly coming around again to, like in more modern medicine, to kind of coming around to looking at things more as a whole, and these different webs that are interconnected within us as humans, whether that's the fascia or it's the gut microbiome and the vagus nerve, and these different things that our body's constantly communicating backwards and forwards in many different ways. And it's not just like these separate systems, like that are like in silos.
Exactly. They're so connected, and we're getting much better at looking at that, of how healing the body can help the mind, how healing the mind can help the body. You can't do one without the other, and yet we tend to talk about them very separately, as you say, very separate, kind of like their psychology and then their sports, and then they're so connected. And ideally, you're looking at them holistically. You're looking at them. You have your movement, you have your breathing, you have your meditation, you have your gratitude, and you combine them all together to have a harmonious body and mind.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought like it was a bit strange, because you don't just like, somebody doesn't go to the psychologist and just like, here's my brain, can you just have a look at it? Or it just feels like how, like I have a childhood friend who trained to become a medical doctor. When he was in training, I was like asking some questions because I was currently doing my own nutrition training. And I was like, well, do you see people, say, for example, he was working in rheumatology. And I said, do you see a lot of people there who have digestive issues? And he was like, well, I don't know, because we don't ask those questions. That's not our field. So it's just kind of how it's currently structured. And I believe that goes back to, was it Descartes or one of those guys a few hundred years ago, kind of declared the separation of this, and we're like still trying to claw it back into it, but it's the same person, and this one person also live in the context of their life and their environment and their neighborhood and their country and all of these and the culture. So it's just so difficult to sort of tease it apart.
We are, though. We're slowly getting there. I really believe we are. And that the proof is the conversations I'm having with the experts in my podcast. I chat with a psychotherapist who says, like, if you have a body ache, for example, she went, or a problem, she had lost her period. She went to a psychotherapy session to heal that instead of going the traditional route of doctors will be like, oh, well, hopefully it comes back. Otherwise, let's do more tests, right? But there was a deeper issue, a deeper reason why her period was gone. So her second thought, knowing a little bit of this mind-body connection, she went to a psychotherapist to heal that. So I think we are catching up with that idea of having a mental issue, healing the body, having a physical issue, having a physical problem, healing the mind. So I think we're catching up with that, or at least we're trying, and I'm trying to do that as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to do that as well, and see how the two different things are connected, and using in my work with people around the relationship with food and eating and their body image, of course, which is the body. Also like how we can bring the body like into the room as a resource to be connected with. So I think that's why I was so fascinated to speak with you as well. So tell me, Anna, like if we come back to that kind of Instagram post that I first sparked my like, oh, I really want to talk to Anna. And of course we had met in person prior to that, but like looking at movement as a path to body acceptance, how would you describe that, and what does that look like in practice from your standpoint?
Well, there's a few different pieces of that puzzle. First of all is the pain that we talked about. And so it's very hard to accept and love your body when you're in pain, when your body is going against you, when your mind is saying, I want to do so many things. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to meet my friends. I want to eat whatever I want. And then your body just says no. Your body shuts down. Your body is in pain. Your body. So healing that through movement, and of course of what you do as well, nutrition and therapy. So healing that pain and that physical discomfort so that your body starts to do the things you want to do is a first step to self-acceptance, to body acceptance. The second part will be learning about what your body can do and how extraordinary it is. So honestly, anatomy. Now, I'm not saying we all have to do an anatomy course tomorrow, but in my movement teachings and my coaching, I add knowledge all the time. I add just nuggets of anatomy in there. This is what your body can do. How amazing is that? And when you find out how incredible the systems it's unbelievable. When you find out more about your anatomy, about what it can do, about this amazing fascia thing, about just basically how incredible your body is, that's when you start to accept it a little bit more and you start to love it a little bit more. And the third thing is just literally practices of gratitude, practices of adding those every day. It's like, thank you, body, for, I'm alive, first of all. Thank you, body, for getting me on this walk. Thank you, body, for allowing me to enjoy this delicious cup of coffee, if that's your thing. And so that gratitude practice that we add into every part of the movement, I think these three together, having no pain or no discomfort, realizing how amazing your body is when it starts to move in an incredible way, when it starts to change how you move, and then adding gratitude, that's really how I see movement as a path to self-love, self-acceptance, first of all.
Yeah, that makes sense. This funny thing with pain is like, because currently my body is not in pain, but like a few weeks ago it was in a good bit of pain with my back, and like how that discomfort, of course, makes it much harder to appreciate it or even accept it, because we don't want to be in that place. So it's just like, and we can just turn around and sort of blame ourselves or blame our bodies for not functioning properly. So that's a good point, and that feels like a good starting point in navigating some of the body acceptance.
Yeah, I always ask a person is like, okay, so let's say, and I use my example, you break your elbow, which is one of the most unimaginable pains. You can't tie your hair. So that's a simple gesture that we do every day. For example, if you have longer hair, I used to have very long hair, and that I took for granted, being able to tie my hair. So I broke my elbow and I couldn't tie my hair and I couldn't do a million other very simple tasks. So in that moment, was I thinking, and this happened while I was having those self-body image issues, self-love issues, and I was thinking about my elbow, broken elbow, and I was thinking, am I actually really thinking about my belly right now? Am I thinking about how my belly comes out of the jeans and how my jeans don't fit, or how people might see when I go into teaching a yoga class that I have a bit of belly and my flappy arms? And am I actually thinking about it? Or am I thinking about my elbow, the excruciating pain, and the fact that I can't do simple things? So when you can do simple things, you take it for granted and you think about how it looks. When that is taken away from you, when you're in pain, you can't think about anything else. So really fixing that discomfort in the body, not fixing it entirely. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's pain management. Sometimes it's acceptance. So when you accept that, when you feel a little bit better than you usually do, I think it's a little bit easier to appreciate and thank your body for what it does.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that's helpful for a lot of people. And is there anything else, like, around, particularly, like you said, you mentioned pain management there, like, for what the times where, like, the pain isn't like an acute pain because, like, we broke something or whatever, but when it's something that is more around management, or somebody's maybe living with chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or something like this, kind of more ongoing, like, do you work with people kind of in that space? And if you do, what does that look like?
I haven't yet, no. Usually what I worked with was posture issues. So a lot of neck, shoulders, back pain. Back pain because it's where I come from. It's my experience. So I have so much more knowledge about that, about how I healed my body and how I help. And it's one of those the most annoying things that stops people from enjoying life all the time. So I haven't worked with chronic pain. But the things is can you change your focus on what your body can do in the moment of the things that, so can you find gratitude in the things that you can do rather than the ones that you can't? Can you find a little bit of acceptance of where you are and how to modify everything in your life to suit? Can you compromise on a few things and not compromise on others? So can you never skip your physiotherapist appointment? Can you get a massage to feel better all the time instead of, I wouldn't know, just prioritizing that self-care and changing how you think about your body to think about the things that are healing, the things that are going well, the things that you have, and the things that you can use to enjoy your life.
Yeah, it's I think that is a difficult space, and thankfully it's not something that I have experienced. I've worked with a few people in that space, and I've become more aware as well. I think as the conversation is broadening around people living with disabilities or chronic illnesses, and how, I think what you said there, the accommodation, and, like, being, I suppose that the hard thing is, like, being acceptance of the need for some of those, and that's that's okay. And for those of us who may be more able-bodied, learning more about the need for people's need for support and for different bodies' abilities as well. But it goes back to that kind of sense when you said when you broke your elbow, or, like, I broke my like bones in my foot or whatever, you've been on crutches. And like when you are able-bodied most of the time, you don't think about like when there's steps or stairs or the basic things that you can do, like having a shower and brush your hair and tie back, or picking things up and all these things. But when that's taken away, even just temporarily, all of a sudden you realize how the world is not quite as friendly for people who have different able bodies, or
Exactly. And we are privileged. So I think we are beyond privileged. If you're able-bodied, you have one of the most incredible privileges out there. And I'm not an expert on this, so I can't really speak on what you do when you don't have any, when you're missing some abilities. But if I'm able-bodied and I'm super privileged, then I choose to spend my energy and time on weight loss, and I choose to spend my energy and time on hiding my body and hating my body and choosing to try to change it all the time. No, I'm privileged. I acknowledge that privilege and I try to enjoy it as much as I can, and look for, there are so many other people who don't have this, and they're inspiring because of how they choose to use their bodies, but because of how they choose to enjoy them, even though they don't have the same.
Some of the things that for those who are able-bodied take for granted. So so much to think about, I think. And again, because of this inherent privilege, it's not wrong, it's just how it is. And it just means that often then we don't think about the things because we don't have to. And that's the whole kind of privilege part, right? Is there anything else, Anna, that you kind of feel like we haven't touched on, that you feel like, okay, I really want to kind of mention this or talk about this before we kind of come to a close?
No, I think that the body acceptance was a big one, and very, very important one, because as I mentioned, we spend so much time and so much money as women, like trying to change. Even I've stopped waxing, for example. Even like the pain we're being put through just because we're women, that men don't have to do most of the time. Or like different, not only women wax and not only women, but us mostly have been told and are being still told by magazines, by newspapers, by social media, by everybody, that we need to look a certain way, that age needs to look a certain way, that, you know what, it's all bullshit. It's all to sell us crap that we don't need. So if we can just drop one thing at a time, small steps, you can drop one thing at a time, you will get to a point where you see that you don't need any of this to enjoy your body. You don't need any of the diets. You don't need any of the crazy gym workouts. You don't need to be able to enjoy your body. If you want to be an athlete, that's absolutely okay. That's absolutely fine. But if you look at your needs and see, what actually do I want? What do I need to enjoy my life? So many things that you need to get rid of.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm taking away from our conversation is that you can definitely engage in movement practices that are supportive of that just supports your body to live your life, and that has absolutely nothing to do with trying to change it in the process.
Exactly. Move to feel good, not to look good. I always say, when you feel good, you look good. You know what? After lovely movement session at home, I meet a friend for coffee, and she's like, "Oh, you look great." I say, "Thank you." I do believe it. I don't care, but I believe it. And that's because I feel good. When you feel good in your body, you have a certain posture, you have a certain glow. It doesn't matter what you look like. People will notice your energy, and that's what people see, your energy, rather than your physical appearance most of the times. People that count, by the way.
I think I agree with that too. So, Anna, as we are closing this conversation, I like to ask my guests, what does joyful nourishment mean to you? And is there favorite ways that you joyfully nourish yourself?
Ooh, well, I'm a big foodie and I'm obsessed with food. And I don't understand when people say, I just eat for nourishment in that way, as in just for what my body needs. I don't understand that. I absolutely love food. So for me, it means really enjoying it. So joyful. It means never having guilt, never having any sort of negative, attaching any negative connotations to food, to nourishment. Again, it should be like movement. It should be like movement. Eat what feels good in your body. I know that the word intuitive eating is so out there right now as the thing, but we always know this. We have this inner knowledge that is always there. You know when you eat something that doesn't feel good, and you know when you eat something that feels good. For me, it feels amazing to eat cake. It brings me joy if it's a good one, if it's good quality, if it's fresh. I eat whatever I want when I want without guilt, and I listen to what my body feels when I eat. So that's joy for me. Eating is joy. Honestly, eating out for me is absolute joy. And I don't eat out very often. And I choose nice places and delicious things because that brings me joy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I definitely have lots of night hunger as well. And when I lost my sense of smell and taste when I had COVID, it was a pretty miserable, there was other miserable parts of that experience, but the aftermath, and thankfully didn't last too long, but I realized then how much pleasure I get from eating foods that I really enjoy and that tastes good to me. Yeah,
I was initially when I got COVID, and I was on holiday and we had to stay like 7 days in a room. And the one thing I was so grateful for is I never lost my sense of taste and smell, because otherwise I would have been miserable, and the body was beyond miserable. And the throat was like having glass in it, and I was still eating pizza. I was still drinking my wine and enjoying my holiday. And I enjoy my holidays through food. And I think that's just such a great way to explore the world as well.
Absolutely. My partner says, it must be the only person, but I think I found a kinship here now, who says, oh, I remember that amazing chocolate ice cream I had in Barcelona like 10 years ago.
I'm definitely the same. I tell my partner all the time, we should go back to Lyon just to eat that type of thing. We should go back there just to eat that. So I remember not so much the place, but the food I had in that specific place. So that's my best memories anyway.
Yeah.
That's joy for me. Movement in a way that makes my body feel good, and eating what makes my body and my soul feel good. That's joy.
Yeah. Thank you. So where can people find you, Anna, if they want to check you out on Instagram, the website, your podcast? And I will put all the links in the show notes as well, so people can go there directly.
Yes, I'm active on Instagram. I'm the Aligned Body Coach on Instagram. My website is anastefan.ie, and my podcast is called Another Mind Body Story.
Super. And yeah, and the podcast episode about fascia and stuff, we link to that as well.
I will send you a link for that. That's the one with Susan Church, and yes, it's called My Hypermobility Was Causing My Anxiety, or something similar. I'm not. Anyway, we'll put the link out there. It's such a good episode to listen to.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm definitely going to cue that myself. So again, thank you for coming on board, and
thank you so much. And thanks everyone.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening. The Joyful Nourishment podcast is produced with no financial backing, and your support means a lot to keep this project going. If this episode has been helpful in any way, please consider liking, subscribing, or leaving a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. This helps the podcast to be found by others. And of course, you can also forward this episode to a friend whom you think may benefit. Find out more about what I offer on straightforwardnutrition.com, And if you're interested in working with me, please use the link in the show notes to book in for a free initial 30-minute session. And finally, please come and join the Joyful Nourishment community over on Substack, unless you're there already, by subscribing to my newsletter using the link below.